Okay, so let's review constructor overload and method overload again. So here in the student class, we created a course called Java 1, right? And when we run or we instantiate an object of student 1, student 2, this one here is automatically instantiated for us. Okay, so we just did that, and we changed the course numbers, and we have access to all these methods in here. If you want to change their data, we could go here and in the main program and set their course IDs, like we did here. Set the course ID, set the course name, and so on. So in here, we can write a constructor for the student class to set this data for us when we instantiate the student object as well. So this one here is a blank constructor, has no parameter. We have another constructor that will take these data, you can pass data to them when we create that object. So in other words, in here, if we were to create a third student, we move down here so I have more spaces. If I do a third student down here, I want to do something like this. Student, and then student 3, new student. I want to pass in the student ID, right? Pass in the credits earned, which is 4 credit, and the points will be 12. So this will override the default. If I don't do that, if I just call this the blank constructor, the constructor has no parameter, then it's going to set to these 9, 9, 3, and 12. I want to be able to set the data when I create this student object here, so I don't have to do like student3.set ID set and so on. So you can create a unique constructor to do just that, and we can do that by creating a new constructor, student, and we just set the receiver for those 3 pieces of data. So that will be the int, gosh, it's string, right? String for the student ID. Notice again, I'm using the same variable name. Int for the credits. I just use credits, it's too long. And int for points. So now I can go and set the same thing. I can copy these and put it in here. I'll just add the set ID here. Set student ID, and I pass in the student ID. I didn't like my set student ID. I put an int. Oh, it's an int type. Okay. I thought it's a string. Int. Okay. So here I'm setting the data based on what's passed to it. They shouldn't be 3. It should be like the credits and then the points. And so now you only do it one time, one line only, because they'll be passed to this constructor. It will find the signature, the matching signature. It's looking for an int, followed by int, and all 3 integers. So in this example here, it's very important the data coming in has to be in that order. Otherwise, it would not make sense, because Java doesn't care what what you put in here. It just know that it takes 3 integers. So here, this satisfies because it's all integers. I could do something like this, and it's completely fine too, right? But it makes no sense now, okay, because of our program. So the order is important. So you'll make sure you put in that order. If you put 4 first and then 1, 2, 3, 4 in the middle, it will not make sense. So I skip all the setting stuff. I just need to get the data out. And then if I were to just copy this again and display them, let me format this. And this will be like student 3. The course ID here, I don't have it set. It'll be null. I'm using the second student ID. I'm going to change that to call a student 3 dot java 1 dot get course ID. In this case, it's null because we didn't set. Oh no, no, it's not null. It's actually shouldn't be null. It should be JV101. Okay, it's a default ID, which is going to be this JV101. We set that course ID there. So let me just put this separator down here also. And if I run this, okay, so you get all those 3 students. This one we manually set those using these set functions. The second one is the default, and the third one is also the default. Why is the default? Well, student ID is 9, 4, and 12. Student 3. Oh, maybe I call the student 2's information. That ID is based on student 2. This should be the student 3. So I change that to student 3 get ID. Okay, so all belong to student 3. And I did not calculate the GPA. So if you notice, I have to do that every time because I did not calculate that, and that's why I get a 0 for GPA. And so usually when you do something like this, I mean, the GPA should be calculated automatically, right? That means you can automate this a little bit. So once a student is created, I already have the information I need, the grade points and the credits earned. So after you instantiate the object, I pass in the data to those information, and then finally down here, I will just compute the GPA. Okay, so if you compute the GPA, then you don't have to change up here too. If you call the compute right away because I have the data already set, and then go ahead and compute that. Once you call the compute function, then the GPA data has been set. So now I don't have to do this part. I don't have to call that manually because it's already called inside the constructor, right? It does it all at once. So now my GPA has been calculated for me. So it saves you a lot of typing, as well as maybe you might have forgotten that and you get some error in your code somewhere because you might forget to calculate, and then maybe you didn't stop here right? You didn't stop here. Maybe you would pass the data to another function to do some other stuff with the GPA, and all this time, because you didn't calculate GPA, it's going to be 0. So you may wonder why, and that could lead to a debugging issue. Okay. So we got this. Now, this Java 1 course, we can also set the data too to change from these default to something else. Okay, so we can create another constructor so that when I pass my data here, I'm going to copy this to get my student 4 down here. This is student 4. I'm going to pass some numbers in here and be like 333444, 3 and 9, and I want to pass in the course information here, right? So the course ID, maybe this is JV 103 or 2 or 3. The course number, the course name, Java 3, and the number of credits, maybe again 3 credits. So you do all at once. And this will override the default numbers that is set if you call the other constructor. So I need this information here, these 3 additional parameters. Okay. So back in the student class, so it will look similar to this one. I'm going to copy this constructor and paste it right below it. And I need to add in 3 more fields here. So and these going to go in here. Okay, these 3 parameters. So I have a string for the course ID. I have a string for the course name, and then I have an int for the credits. It'll be a course credit because I already have credits there. Okay. And this is hard to see. Let me just do this and break it down into separate lines, like that. You can do that. You can do it this way if you want. It's easier to see this way. Okay, because you can. Sometimes it's easier to see if you put it in like that. Okay, so I have the student ID, the credits for that student class. This will be our credits earned. So now it becomes important, right? The credits earned and not just the course credits, right? And so these 3 here will first applies to these 3 parameters, these variables here. The last 3 applies to the Java object up here. Okay. So here, somewhere in here, I need to say Java1 dot set course ID. Right? As you can see, it's visible because Java 1 is already instantiated, and it's going to take in the course ID. Java 1 set course name. We're taking the course name, so it knows that, right? Because I'm using the exactly same name, so it will grab that by default. So again, safely typing. And then the final one is the set credits. And the course credits. So there it is, how you set that using the setters. So now, back here, if I change all these to 4s, That's all I have to do, right? And student number 4 should have those information, okay, based on the data that I passed to it, which is these guys right here in line 68. As you can see, the course ID is unique. I didn't show the course name, and so I could. If you show the course name, then they'll be unique as well. Okay, if you add the course names and the course credit, it will show Java 3 and 3 as well. So in here we have, I call these 3 functions to set those data. The reason why is because I already instantiated this object up here to say new course. Okay, because I did that already. If you didn't do this, if I were just to do this, if I say Java and I stop there like that, okay, let me just comment this out so you can see. So this is, sometimes you do this for this reason, and I'll show you in a minute here. So I want to do just that. So I save a location in memory called, this is a variable called Java1, and it's not created yet, so I can't use it. If I save this, if I go back, my code here will not work because these are not instantiated. As you can see, it has an error because I did not instantiate the object of the course. Okay. So when I have a variable just like this, it's a placeholder that when I create the student, then I can say, okay, once the student is created, go ahead and do this. Java1 is new, what I had earlier, right? Do that. So I will instantiate the object inside the constructor and not outside of the constructor here. I could still have the same object. It would still work. This time only works for the student that calls the blank constructor or the empty constructor here. The other two will not work because this one here, I didn't call this constructor, so therefore the object of Java1 was never instantiated in here, nor it is in here. Okay. So again, before I can use Java1 here, I have to instantiate it, right? I use the new course. So if I copy this line and put it inside the other two constructors, okay, you see that here, if I do this, then I don't have to call these 3 lines because I can replace this with this. Replace that with the course name, and the course credits goes right here. So I save 3 lines of code. Okay. I instantiate the object right within the constructor because this object is in the global space. And both of these here, since I did not pass the data to them, they will still have the same default data. But the third one, I passed the data to that course, so they are set instantly when I instantiate this Java1 object. And now when you run the file from back here, you get exactly the same as we had earlier. Okay? So it's just the same data. So it's a technique that you can use inside a class like this. If you are going to use this object only when a constructor is used in here, then put it inside a constructor. If you want to do it this way, that means if I run line 11 instead, then this object will always exist even though I may not even use it at all. Okay. So if you don't intend to use it, just create a placeholder for that until you use it. Okay. And not only that, it saves you time because now I can call the constructor and instantiate all this data in here based on the type of constructor for the student constructor, right? So you have more flexibility in that sense. You can call a different constructor if I have a different constructors inside the course class. Here I only have one. If I have multiple of them, then I can choose which one to call in here based on the data passed to the student class. Okay. So and this is a constructor overload because we're overloading the constructor, the student constructor, with different types of data.